Hey everybody, it's the Doll Boy, and today I'll show you how I made this pink dress for Ariel, inspired by the dress she wears in the dinner scene in The Little Mermaid, including these puffy sleeves. As far as dolls go, not many of them came out with the pink dress that really resembles the dress shown in the movie, so I decided to try and make one for myself. Since I'm not an expert at sewing, the dress is not perfect, but I still wanted to share how I did it. I made this dress in several pieces to make sure the dress is more versatile as well. The first piece of the dress I created is the white pleated skirt. I used this really soft, shiny material. To make the skirt, I fold a piece of fabric in half horizontally and measure whether it's long enough for the doll. Because I do want the skirt to be floor length and I'm going to be hemming the edges, I am taking quite a bit of extra space. Then I fold the fabric again vertically, once again making sure it's long enough for the doll. I keep folding the fabric into thinner triangles, checking the length as I go. When you cut the fabric in a straight line, you get a circle shape of fabric. For the look I was going for, this one circle didn't give me enough volume, so I decided to create two more circles of the same fabric, using the same technique as before, to give the skirt more volume. After cutting the three circles, I fold each one of them back into triangle shapes, cutting the tip to make a hole in the middle of the circle. Then I cut a straight line from one end of the fabric to that hole in the middle to open up the circle. When I did that for all three of the circles, I attached them to each other by laying them on each other good side to good side, and then sewing them together on the line that I cut before. I take the third circle and attach this one the same way, laying it with the good side facing the good side of the other piece, sewing on the lines where I cut. After attaching these three circles, the top of the skirt is way too wide to fit the doll's waist. So I sew a loose, straight stitch at the top of the circle. I find the end of the threads and pull one of them, making the fabric gather. I test the skirt around the waist of the doll again, and when I'm happy with the amount of gathering, I tie the ends of thread together so it doesn't move too much. I also add an elastic band, keeping the pleats in the fabric in place. I take a pink ribbon and sew it to the skirt good side to good side. For this, I use a tighter straight stitch. I cut off all the excess fabric to prevent the skirt from looking bulky. Adding this ribbon, make sure there's a clean finish to the top of the skirt, and it also is a really nice way to put on the skirt easily. By then, this is what the skirt looks like. I already like the shape, but I really needed to hem the ends for a cleaner finish. This is one thing I'm not sure I did correctly, so if you know a better way to do it, please let me know. The way I did it was by folding over the ends of the fabric, making sure you fold away from the good side of the fabric, and sewing a straight line all the way around the dress. My main struggle with this was the round shape of the skirt, because hemming the skirt the way I did it made the ends curl up in a way I didn't like. After hemming the entire bottom of the skirt, I cut away the excess fabric as close to the stitch as possible. As you can see, these are the wrinkles I was talking about that were created by the way I hemmed the edges. To reduce this wrinkling, I take a hair straightener to flatten it out. You can also use a regular iron, but I didn't have one near me, and this worked just fine. I also did make sure to heat a test strip of fabric before to make sure it doesn't melt. To make the bottom of the skirt more neat than it was, I go in again, folding the ends to the inside, making sure the previous stitch is on the fold line. For areas that were still really curly, I kept the straightener close. After that, this is what the skirt looked like. For the pink overlayer, I used this stretchy fabric that resembles crushed velvet. Just like I did with the white skirt, I cut a circle out of the fabric. However, this time I only used one circle. I cut the top of the folded circle to create a hole in the middle as well. I cut a straight line from the outside to the middle of the circle and sew a loose, straight stitch on the top to gather the fabric so it fits around the doll's waist perfectly. To keep the fabric in place, I once again tie a knot in the threads and put an elastic band on the fabric. I sew another straight stitch, this time a tighter one, to keep the folds in the fabric the way I want them to stay. For the top of the dress, I cut a rectangle of fabric to fit around the doll's upper body easily. I take another smaller strip of the same fabric, fold it in half, and sew it to the top to give it a really clean finish. I make sure to keep in mind the direction of the stretch and use a zigzag stitch on my sewing machine to allow the fabric to keep its stretch. I cut away the excess fabric to get rid of the bulkiness. Then I mark where I want the top to end and the skirt to start on the wrong side of the fabric. And I sew the top and skirt together, making sure the good sides are facing each other. This also allows me to still see the mark I made on the top. After cutting the excess fabric, I fold the dress in half, with the good side on the inside, and sew a straight line from the top going down to the end of the skirt. I take a needle and thread and weave it through the top a couple of times for this really pretty sweetheart neckline. Ariel's dress in the movie doesn't have this sweetheart neckline, but I feel like it always makes dresses look a little more glamorous. Then I create a split in the middle of the skirt to give it that draped effect. To soften the split, I go in again, cutting the edges more rounded. To create the puffed sleeve, I start with this small strip of fabric. I sew a loose straight stitch once again to gather the fabric. You really want these sleeves to be pretty thin because they only need to fit around the arms. Tying the elastic bands around the fabric really helped me to keep the fabric in place during the process, so here I do the same thing. I attach a bigger rectangle to these gathered sleeves to become the long sleeves later. I undo the elastic and gather this side as well by sewing a loose straight stitch and pulling the thread. To give this side a neat finish as well, I sew a small strip of folded fabric to this side. Again, sewing the fabric good side facing the good side. This gives the sleeve a really nice puff and neat edges as well. I cut away the excess fabric and then I fold the sleeves in half to sew the sleeves closed, making sure the good side is on the inside. I decided to keep the sleeves separate from the dress to have the opportunity to change them if I want to. And I'm done! I really hope you liked this tutorial. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. If you want to see more pictures of my dolls, make sure to follow me on Instagram as well, @thedollboy. See you next time!